Hey, church family, I wanted to take this opportunity to present you with another word of encouragement as we continue to watch the end times unfolding right before our very eyes. Now, the chances are you've already heard that the murder rates across America have been skyrocketing. And according to the stats from 2020, Americans have been killing Americans in record numbers. Now, New York City saw a 41% increase in the murder rate throughout 2020, and the number of murders in Chicago this past year, well, it's almost twice as high as New York City. As a matter of fact, there were over 700 homicides by gun in Chicago throughout 2020, and close to 800 total homicides throughout the year. And listen, things aren't much better on the West Coast. The violent crime rate appears to be rising faster and faster there in Portland. It's actually throughout 2020, the number of shootings was up 116% compared to the same time last year. And murders, well, they're surging in that area. And it seems like the violent crime rate records are being broken in nearly every major American city. And there are those who look at all of this and they're growing more and more concerned that our society is in the process of a complete meltdown. Without debate, the pandemic has created conditions for this rise in violent crime. And especially when you factor in the government's response, which includes months and months and months of lockdowns, resulting in mass unemployment, well, we shouldn't be surprised by the civil unrest that continues to increase here in our country. Not only that, but many cities have also defunded their police departments, well, in order, to appease the angry mob that believes that all cops are bastards. And now we have areas of America where police departments are unable to cope with the increasing criminal activity there in their community. And let's not forget about the states, who decided to release thousands of inmates because of COVID-19. I wasn't able to find a year-end total, but as of a report last April, there were actually 16,000 inmates who were released from prisons in 20 different states, because of reasons, because of overcrowding, because we didn't want them to get COVID-19. So 2020 was a year when we defunded the police and then gave criminals a get-out-of-jail-free card, and then we wonder why the violent crime rate is completely out of control. We can't figure it out. We can't make sense of all this. Well, listen, not only are Americans killing Americans in record numbers now, but Americans are killing themselves in record numbers. According to Dr. Charles Pemberton, he says that we're seeing more suicides in nearly every age group. And while we don't have the hard numbers, and we won't for another 2 years, but we should expect that we're going to see that there was an increase in the suicide rate throughout 2020. As a matter of fact, it was actually last July when the director of the CDC, Director Redfield, he informed us that suicides and drug overdoses have surpassed the death rate for COVID-19 among high school students. Now think about that for a moment. More teenagers died from suicide and drug overdoses in 2020 than from a virus, which teenagers have a 99.8% chance of surviving. The reason for this, according to Director Redfield, was due to the fact that lockdowns and lack of public schooling constituted a disproportionately negative impact on young people's mental health. Here's how he put it. There has been another cost that we've seen, particularly in high schools. He says we're seeing, sadly, far greater suicides now than we are deaths from COVID. We are seeing far greater deaths from drug overdose that are above excess that we had as background than we are seeing the deaths from COVID. Without debate, this is heartbreaking. It breaks my heart to consider all of these kids who felt like their only solution was suicide. And this is especially sad as we begin to realize that the mitigation measures that were employed to protect us have actually created the conditions which have resulted in nationwide rise in the murder rate, as well as a spike in teenage suicides, which have claimed the lives of more kids than COVID-19. Now, with all this being the case, I just want to encourage every believer, we need to get plugged into our Christian community. And the reason why is because we were designed to be part of a community. We need to be plugged into our community. We need to maintain our connections with one another in order to maintain our spiritual health as well as our mental health. And listen, if you have kids, it's even more important, I would argue. We need to make sure that our kids are actively involved in our children's ministry at church or our youth group, or to just put it in the words of Paul, we need to consider one another in order to stir up love and good works, not forsaking the assembling of ourselves together, as is the manner of some, but exhorting one another, and so much the more as you see the day approaching. As we see the day of the Lord growing closer and closer, that's even more reason for us to continue gathering together, worshiping the Lord together, and building one another up in the love of the Lord. Listen, if you're here in Austin, Texas, then I invite you. Join us here at Calvary South Austin for our Sunday services, which begin tomorrow morning at 9:15 or 11:15 a.m. Let's gather together so that we can corporately worship our Savior Jesus. And so that in this we can receive the strength that we need to continue fighting the good fight of faith, all for the glory of God.